Hi everyone and welcome to another lesson on Jimi Hendrix rhythm style. Now, I couldn't have done all these lessons on Jimi Hendrix's rhythm without looking at what we're going to cover in this video, the Hendrix chord. Okay, so in this lesson, we're going to learn the chord that has been dubbed the Hendrix chord. I'm going to tell you how to play it, show you how to play it in a few different places, show you how Hendrix used it, tell you the theory behind it, and how you can get it into your own playing. Stay tuned and I'll show you how to do all of that. In this lesson then, we're going to be covering some more Jimi Hendrix rhythm, and this is part number 8 of the Jimi Hendrix rhythm lessons, and we're going to be looking at the chord that has been dubbed the Jimi Hendrix chord. But if you haven't done it already, hit like to like the video, hit subscribe to the channel, and click that alert bell so you don't miss any updates. If you'd like a PDF workbook with everything that I'll be covering in this video, you'll see a link below in the description, so make sure you grab that. Also, I've done a bunch of other videos showing you all about Jimi Hendrix rhythm style, but as I said, in this video, we're going to be covering the chord that has been dubbed the Hendrix chord. And we're going to be looking at how to play it in a few different places. So you'll have a few options of how to play it. Most people tend to only gravitate to one area. We're going to talk about how Hendrix used it, a bit of the sort of the theory behind it as well, and also how you can start getting this chord into your own playing. So let's just get stuck in then. Let's just learn the shape, which is probably the most common way to play it. Then I'll show you another way and we'll just progress from there. So let's take a look at the Hendrix chord. We're going to do it in E. So you need to place your middle finger in the 7th fret on the A string, index finger on the 6th fret on the D, 3rd finger in the 7th fret on the G string, and little finger in the 8th fret on the B. So, and we can actually strum, as it's in E, we can strum all the strings that play the 2 open E strings as well. But that's essentially our shape for it, and it sounds like this. Okay, it's a really crunchy sounding chord, and I'll explain later in the video why that is. Okay, so let me just play that round a few times so you can get used to hearing how it sounds. Okay, I did it then without too much of the E strings ringing out. Now basically, wherever your middle finger is the root of the chord. So if we wanted to play that chord in D, we'd simply find a D along the A string and play the same shape. So that would be a Hendrix chord in D. Now obviously if we're playing it in other places, you can't hit the open E strings. For example, if I was to play it here in E flat and I hit the open E strings, it'd sound like this. Absolutely terrible. Okay, so make sure when you're playing this in other positions, you're going to be muting both of the E strings. Now it's fairly easy to mute this high E because you can just, flatten your fingers off a bit and your high E will catch under your pinky. This one's a little bit more tricky. I either touch it with my middle finger or I bring my thumb over the top and just touch it lightly to stop it sounding so it's muted. Let's go back to E. Okay, but essentially that is wherever that middle finger is along the A string, as long as you know your notes along the A string, it will give you the chord. So that's one shape. Let's look at another couple of shapes as well. So this is the next one we're going to do. Okay, this is sort of like our E-shaped chord. So normally when you play, as much as that's an F sharp major, it's known as our E shape because it comes from the E chord. All we need to do from there, if you find that bar chord first, we basically need to fret the 5th fret at the top. Okay, so your pinky, your little fingers can have to play those 2 notes at the top. Okay, so what I would tend to do, if you know your 7th chord already without your little finger, bring that in and bar those 2 strings in the 5th fret. Now that's pretty hard to hold that down. You could also move your 3rd finger to the D string. If you prefer, so you can either plant that in the 4th fret on the A or 4th fret on the D. Okay, and that will give you basically the same sound, just slightly different variation. There's not much in it, if I'm honest. If I was to play it, I probably would use that 3rd finger on the A string, although that's quite a difficult chord. Okay, that's one other way to do it. Another way, which is a sort of a slightly easier way to do it, would be to play the root on the D string with our middle finger. So that's the 4th fret on the D. Index is on the 3rd fret on the G, and we're going to keep that bar where it was. So bar across the 5th fret, index in the 3rd fret on the G, middle finger in the 4th fret on the D. And we don't want to play the E or the A, so you either mute them or just don't strum them. Okay, so that gives you 3 different ways to play that chord. Let's just talk about that final one, moving it around. As I said, the first shape when we did it with a big thick chord like this, your root is on the low E. So for example, if we want to do that in A, we'd find an A and we'd play that shape. And then the second one we looked at, the root was on the D string. So if I wanted to do an A, there's an A, or you can also see that octave trick like this. And then it is like that. Okay, that gives you 3 different options to play that chord. And let's just chat about Hendrix and how he used it. So let's talk about the song Purple Haze. That one and Foxy Lady, maybe Voodoo Child as well. There's quite a few that Hendrix used it in, and when you get used to the sound, you'll start hearing it in his music. Purple Haze is probably the first time I learned it after learning the riff, and then obviously in the verse sections, this is where he plays the chord. So after he's done is the Hendrix chord. Then he plays a G and an A. Okay, so Purple Haze is one of the examples there where he uses this chord, and he's playing it in E, the Hendrix chord to G, to A. One of the most classic examples of that chord. Another use of it, which everyone is familiar with, is the song Foxy Lady, and then he uses the other voicings that I showed you. So these ones. So he plays. So when Hendrix actually does that, if you watch videos of him live, he brings his thumb over the top and he plays it like this. Now I can't actually do this because my hands are not big enough, but if you watch him play it, he sort of holds this one down and then he catches this low F sharp note. So he does it like this. For me, that's super difficult, so I'm not sure if you guys are able to do that. I can't. So if I ever play Foxy Lady, I'll do the first voice in, or even sometimes I'll just hit the root and hit the top bit of the chord like that. Okay, so that in Foxy Lady, he's playing kind of like that low shape. Then the high shape we looked at. The 2 shapes. Okay, so there's the use of those shapes as well in the song Foxy Lady. There are other examples as well, but they're probably the 2 most iconic, okay? And they are just some of the examples of where Hendrix played this chord. So then, what is the chord called? Well, this chord is actually called 7 sharp 9 chord. So now here's the time for the theory. Why is it called a 7 sharp 9? Well, basically it's a dominant 7th chord with a sharp 9th on the top of it. A dominant 7th chord would have a root, a major 3rd, a 5th, a flattened 7th, and then if we want to get the 7 sharp 9 part, we need to add a sharpened 9th on top, okay? So when we did it in Purple Haze, that would be known as E7 sharp 9. Foxy Lady would be F sharp 7 sharp 9. Bit of a mouthful, that one, but essentially that's what it is. It's known as the 7 sharp 9 chord. Now what's quite interesting with the 7 sharp 9 chord, technically a sharp 9 is also the same note as a minor 3rd. So if I take an E scale, an E major scale, there's our major 3rd, there's my minor 3rd, flatten it by 1 fret. Now, when we played that Hendrix chord, that note was in there, okay? So the minor 3rd from an E is a note G, and there is the top. So technically then, our Hendrix chord, our 7 sharp 9 chord, has a root, a major 3rd, and a sharp 9, which is kind of like a minor 3rd. So they're quite clashy when you play them together. So if I just play those two notes, I'm playing a G sharp and a G. You know, they're really, really clashy. I mean, if I play them closer together, kind of like this, it does really, really clash. So when you put it with the rest of the chords, it doesn't clash quite as much because the other notes kind of make it just sound really, really thick and really, really tense. But essentially, we kind of have a major and a minor third, giving it a little bit of tension and also feels very unresolved. Now, Hendrix really used it to add some sort of richness and some harmonic complexity to his music. And he was actually one of the first popular musicians to bring this chord over from genres like jazz and blues and bring it into the popular music and rock space. So that is sort of why then it's become dubbed as the Hendrix chord, because he was the first popular music musician to bring it from these other genres and bring it into the mainstream. Now, obviously, with a lot of Hendrix's guitar playing, it was pretty groundbreaking in the 60s. Nobody had heard anything like this before, and this is another example of that chord being brought from genres such as jazz into the mainstream. And that is why when you say to a guitarist, play the Hendrix chord, everyone associates this with Jimi Hendrix, and it's such an iconic sound. You know, as soon as you hear, I'm thinking Purple Haze, Foxy Lady, you know, it is just iconic to Hendrix's music, and it's in a lot of his songs, and it just sounds so good. So that's a bit of the theory, that's a bit of where it comes from and why Hendrix used it. Let's look at how you can get this chord into your own playing. Well, you can use it just to riff on as a standalone. So let's say I was just jamming on the chord, I'm just going to play an E, and I'm just going to play some pentatonic-y stuff around it. Now I'm going to be using E minor pentatonic, because the interesting thing about this chord is, as I mentioned, we have a major third and a minor third, so you can kind of use the minor pentatonic or the minor blues or the major blues over the top of it. It really, really gives us kind of a wide palette of notes. I'm just going to jam some stuff with this Hendrix chord, and I'm just going to play some riffing around a minor pentatonic or blues, and it kind of sounds like this. Okay, that was just me kind of like jamming on the chord, and it's so much fun. I was kind of, you know, just playing around with the G and an A, very similar to Purple Haze, and then just some E minor pentatonic bluesy licks in the sort of vein of Jimi Hendrix. Obviously, I don't claim to be anything like him at all, but that's kind of what I was sort of feeling, is jamming some stuff, and it's so much fun doing that. So that's the first thing. You can kind of incorporate it into your songs like that. You can use it as part of a song. So there I was doing a G and an A as Hendrix was doing Purple Haze. I could have gone to a C, D. You know, so I'm very much seeing it there as more of a E minor chord rather than an E major chord. And that's personally for me where I find its use the best, is using it as a sort of like a substitute for an E minor in that kind of context where the riffs are based around it. So that sounds really, really good. As it's a dominant 7th chord, you can use it in the blues. Now, it works particularly well as your 5 chord. So if I went to A blues, I play through the blues, where it sounds really good is I use it here. 1, 2, 3. I use it in the very last bar of a 12-bar blues. It can sound really, really good there as well, because it's such a tense sounding chord. Obviously, the point usually of your 5 chord is to make it sound a bit unresolved and take it back to your 1. So that's a really nice use of it, using the final chord of your blues back to your 1 chord. That works in a major or a minor blues. In a minor blues, it probably works even better than a major blues. So if I was playing in the minor blues in A, and I'm just going to skip to the end part. So 3, and here we go. So I'm using it as a substitute for my 5 chord in a minor blues, and it sounds really, really good there because, as I said before, the chord sounds very tense, and we're going to move from the back to our 1 chord like that. Okay, so that's a few ways you can use it there. You can use it as part of your song, as a riff. You can use it in the blues. You can also try using it, obviously, in jazz or in funk. It'll work really, really well in funk music as well. Or you can use it as sort of like a really dramatic effect chord at some point in your song, especially in transition into sections or into a key change or something like that, because the chord is very, very dramatic sounding. So maybe your song, let's say your song was in A. Something like that. I'm just doing a sort of a standard chord sequence in A minor. Well, rather than playing the E7, as we've talked about, we can add the sharp 9, and it will really give it that lift, say, going into a chorus. So you're coming out of your verse. Here we go. And off we go, because this sounds so tense. It really adds a bit of drama and a bit of colour into a music. So you can use it in that way, especially as your 5 chord. You can use the Hendrix chord instead. Okay, the Hendrix chord then, to summarise, as we said, it's called the 7 sharp 9 chord. It's a dominant 7th chord with a sharp 9 on top. We've explored a few different ways to play it, how Hendrix used it, and how you can put it into your own music. And it's a really, really valuable chord as part of your guitar playing toolkit. Even just if you want to sound a bit like Hendrix, you want to add in some blues, or even if you want to riff around, it sounds really, really cool. Hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, hit like to like the video, click subscribe to subscribe to the channel, and hit that alert bell so you don't miss any updates. If you want a PDF workbook with everything I've covered in this video, you'll see a link below in the description to a free PDF workbook. If you'd like some more videos and lessons and content from myself, there's a bunch of other stuff on my YouTube channel, all the other Hendrix videos as well. And also, come and check out my online guitar school called Fretlix, www.fretlix.com. Loads of great courses and lessons, guaranteed to help you become a better guitarist. Hope you enjoyed that video, and I'll see you again soon.